I want to say good afternoon to everyone that is watching this live on Facebook. First of all, I want to ask each and every one of you to be kind enough tonight. Be kind to me tonight and share this video out. Share this video out. We have a dynamic guest tonight, all the way from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Now, I'm not going to try to introduce him. I'm going to let him kind of do that himself. But I want to welcome everyone to Bell's Video and Audio Service Podcast. This is the month of February, and we are celebrating Black History Month. And I couldn't find a better time to bring this professor on my podcast tonight. I am happy, overjoyed, excited to have my friend, my cousin, and it's so much more my mentor, Dr. Alvin Thornton. So I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Alvin Thornton to introduce himself. And I will come back with this podcast. Dr. Thornton, it's in your hands.
Well, good evening, good afternoon, my dear brother. My cousin, son of Métis, and is happy that Métis and Lily Mae's sons are able to talk this evening about Black history. I am Alvin Thornton, Dr. Alvin Thornton. I'm a retired 40-year professor at Howard University, four-term chairman of the 20th largest school system in the nation, education commission named in my honor of Maryland. I have two daughters. One is an engineer and one is a lawyer, and married to the Reverend R.L. Heflin, who himself is a historic icon of Randolph County, Roanoke. So I'm just honored to be with you this evening to talk about Black history, which is really the history of our nation.
Amen. Thank you. And again, thank you, Dr. Alvin Thornton, for coming on tonight and be my guest. Like I said, I'm excited just to have this conversation tonight. And I want my audience to just tune in and to listen to this great conversation that me and Dr. Thornton going to have tonight surrounding our Black history. But before we start, you always need the word of God. In the book of Isaiah 46:9, it talks about remembering your history. We need to remember our history. You can find that in Isaiah 46:9, but you go through the Bible and find a lot concerning history. So Dr. Thornton, I want to kind of open up with a question I'm going to ask you. First of all, I want you to kind of talk with me a little bit and talk with my audience concerning the Reconstruction era, if you will, please, sir.
Well, thank you for that. Let's all remember the great words of the great Marcus Garvey and those who took his words and continued to repeat them after his passage, and that is, a tree without roots will inevitably die. And so a people without their history will have their legacy stolen, and they will have nothing to transfer to their children, and their children will be directionless. So let us always remember that. And that's why it's important for us to talk about this. There's a great deal of discussion now going on about the 1619 Project, the original arrival on these shores of our ancestors from whom we all come. So for much of our country's history from that period up to 1865, we are essentially enslaved as almost like cattle.
Yes.
We have no citizenship. We have no constitutionally protected right. We are the extension property of those who owned our ancestors. And that's for over 200 years. People have to remember that. So there's great damage to us culturally, psychologically, genetically, and otherwise. We are propertyless people. And so after 1865, when there's a great war within the nation called the Civil War, among other things, but most importantly, a battle over about whether or not it was appropriate to enslave human beings, which you and I would take has always been inappropriate and unbiblical, and certainly unchristian. But after that period, when we have the Civil War, the passage of the 13th Amendment, which ends chattel slavery, and the 14th Amendment, which creates citizenship status, though incomplete for Black people. Citizenship status gives us, whether you're born or naturalized, you were a citizen of the United States. Particularly for Black males. Later on, it comes for Black females. You have liberty, you have privileges and immunity, you can marry, you can be educated. See, because before that, you could not even teach Black people to read. It was unconstitutional for them, people talking about banning books now, it was unconstitutional to even teach Black people to read. Literacy among Black people was felt to be heresy. Then we have the 15th Amendment, which passes in 1870, which gives Black men at that time the right to vote. Now that's where the critical part starts, because it had been 5 years when the Civil War ends. Federal troops, Sherman is gone now, right? 5 years are over. White folk in North and South have gotten tired of fighting each other. And essentially, by 1870, the North, certainly the federal troops are leaving, and Black people are left again to be oppressed by the whites, especially the Southerners. But for a brief period between 1870 and 1877, there is a period we call Reconstruction. I call it Black Reconstruction, where some of the great potential of our nation for the first time begins to be seen, particularly in the area of education. Because for the first time, America introduces the notion of public government-supported education. That comes out of educating Black people. That's the Freedmen's Bureau, Howard University. I taught there for 40 years as a professor, and I walked the building, which they call the Freedmen's Building, right? Which is exactly where this concept of Reconstruction comes from. The idea of Black people for the first time, Black men, holding public office. I mean, they were members of Congress. They were members of the state legislatures of Alabama and South Carolina and Georgia. And this is 5 years after the end of the enslavement of Black people. But after you have the 1877 presidential election, there's a deal made in order to re-empower former white male Confederates. The federal government leaves, and then you have this rash of terror, I call it. We call it the nadir, the return of those who had enslaved our people for more than 200 years, the return of them and re-enslavement in a sense of Black people. And we became what my grandparents emerged under. We became sharecroppers, living on the land of those who had, the children of those who had enslaved us. Now that was violently enforced by clans, the Ku Klux Klan, because again, there were no federal protections anymore, right? And that Reconstruction period. The thing I ask people to remember is that Reconstruction period for a moment showed America what it could be. But it also showed America what many people still reject, and that is fundamental equality for Black people and for those who have been previously enslaved.
And Dr. Thornton, I'm gonna kind of shift just a little bit. I want to go all the way back to Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and I want you to share with the audience, because I had opportunity. You carried me to the place where the enslaved people were brought into Maryland. I want to talk about that a little bit. Dealing with Kunta and Thornton.
Yeah, right. We just elected in Maryland, of which I'm so proud, the first Black governor of Maryland. He's the only Black governor in this country now. We've had 4, and he's the only. His name is Wes Moore. Now, when he was inaugurated, he started his march to the Capitol to be inaugurated at that site, which is the Kunta Kinte arrival point in the port of Annapolis there, where you and your darling wife and my wife visited that day, right there where Alex Haley's statue is. He walked up the hill past where the statue of Roger Taney, who's the white man who ruled the Black people, Supreme Court Justice, who ruled that Black people were not human. This is the 1857 Dred Scott case. That's the case before the Civil War where the Supreme Court said Black people had no rights that white people could be expected to adhere to. That's the Dred Scott case. There used to be a statue of him standing in front of the Capitol. We forced them to take it down because it can't stand there. You see what I'm saying? It just can't. That was taken down, and then he moved on over to a statue of Frederick Douglass, which is on the other side of the statue. That's Upper Marlboro. That's the space where you were. And what I say to people, and this should be true all over, we must have a dialogue so our children can see us discussing this, not to make anybody uncomfortable, but this is the history that our children must know in order for them not to repeat the bad ways and errors of their ancestors who enslaved our people, built the wealth of this nation, built the foundational wealth of the nation that allowed us to industrialize and allow us to become the great nation economically that we are now. That was built on the back of our ancestors.
Amen. And again, I want y'all to please share this out. Share this broadcast out, because I want this broadcast to go all over the world. This is history.
Indeed.
And I am so proud. But what I'm so proud about also, that this gentleman is from Randolph County.
Yeah, right.
Randolph County. And one thing I like about Dr. Thornton, he never forget from which he came.
No, I can't. You know, I'm a little boy born there in the spring in Rock Mills, actually. You know, that's in Randolph County. I ultimately moved on to Roanoke, but you know, I was born there in Rock Mills, right?
Yes.
I would have gone to. There was a school at the Weehawkee Baptist Church, right across the street, a Rosenwald School, right? That was a school that, because there were no schools that was supported by the state for Black people in Randolph County. There were no until the turn of the century, 1919. There were no schools. There were little church schools, and I would have gone there. That school burned down, and then that's when I went to the Randolph County Training School, which is I ask people to never forget that great school called the Randolph County Training School. 5,500 of those schools built across the old Confederacy to educate children. See, there would be no schools without the Rosenwald schools. From Maryland, there were several in my state, most of them in North Carolina, a lot of them in Alabama, and many of them in Roanoke. You see, so let us never forget that, because we were denied. Remember, I said we were denied the opportunity to read books. You could be killed just from reading and learning to being literate. So when you have a man like Julius Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington and others, Miss Mamie Shealy, I could name some local names, right?
Yes.
Who helped to create Randolph County Training Schools so that you and I could be on this program this evening.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Thornton. Dr. Thornton, it's always a problem when you bring up the word critical race theory, and schools draw up when you bring that up. Let us talk on that a little bit. Critical race theory, doctor.
Now, first of all, let's be very clear. There's a big lie. No one teaches critical race theory, which they CRT, in our secondary schools. It is not taught to our elementary school students. You won't find it in any curriculum, on any syllabus. No elementary school teacher teaches it, no middle school, no high school. I taught it as a university professor. So it is taught to adults. And it's one among many subjects taught in graduate, primarily in law schools. But it's a big lie to stampede and make parents afraid. So you have to, in order to do this, we've always used fear in order to oppress people. So you make parents afraid of something that does not exist. It's almost like what Donald Trump does and what DeSantis is doing. Just tell lies in order to stampede and make people afraid. Now, but for those people who do teach it at the graduate and law school level, the question that is being asked when you're teaching critical race theory is, how did this thing come to be? And what do I mean by this thing? How do you take a people, a nation of people called African Americans almost, and just subjugate them, right? How do you create? See, I never had a chance to go to school with white kids. What is the legal structure that allowed that to happen? Critical race theory asks us to think about that. I could not go into a restaurant across from my school. My life is threatened at gunpoint to go into a restaurant. Critical race theory says, how do we understand how that legal system comes about? Okay, how is it that after World War II, and we have Social Security, and Black people, especially disproportionately our Black mothers who were maids, do not have access to Social Security? You see, how is it that after Black men go to war and fight in World War I and II, and they come back and they do not have access to veteran benefits? Critical race theory says we have to have a way to understand how those systems come up so that we can deconstruct them and create a more equal playing field for our citizens. That's what it's all about.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Thornton, for bringing that out, because, you know, especially in secondary school, it's not taught. And like we are afraid to even talk about it into this city school system all around this country. But
now keep in mind, Brother Bell, that just as an example, see, in the 1940s and 50s, you know, it's illegal for the NAACP to exist. Absolutely illegal. And NAACP is being forced to give its membership list to government. You understand what I'm saying to you?
yes,
So this thing of attacking organizations, knowledge that helps to liberate oppressed people is nothing new. There's a case called NAACP versus Alabama, where the state of Alabama is saying, NAACP, you must give me your membership lists. Why? Because Black people had to hide their membership in NAACP. They would lose their jobs. They would lose the government would in fact come after them. Thankfully, the Supreme Court said you cannot force them to give the membership. So this thing is intimidation. Now you have governors like Governor DeSantis and others having teachers be afraid, right? To put certain books on their reading list.
yes,
On fear of being fired. Books by what? By Mother Rosa Parks, of all people. Books by James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou. You see what I'm saying? Now,
yes, sir.
This is in 2023. We're going back, trying to go back. They're trying to go back to the 1950s. And that's why I use the example of the NAACP being a banned organization. See, the work of people like Wilkie Clark, first NAACP president in Randolph County, he would, you know, he was intimidated during that period the same way that they're trying to intimidate people today.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Thornton. And as we move forward, Dr. Thornton, you know, I want to talk about the Jim Crow laws. You know, we back during Dr. King's day and his civil rights movement, I just want to talk about the Jim Crow laws.
Well, now look, Jim Crow is almost like I say, I was in South Africa when Nelson Mandela was elected as president. And I said to myself and to my family that that experience reminded me of my growing up in the 1950s. Because Jim Crow, I grew up under Jim Crow. We said that my citizenship status was not equal to white people. I grew up in that system. I was born in 1948, the time when Jim Crow was really being institutionalized. It was really being institutionalized, a system of what we call separate development. One development for white people, another development for Black people. And it would be secondary.
Yes.
You see, even the name of the Randolph County Training School, people don't realize that, right? You ask the question, when the Randolph County School Board created schools, they created schools for white kids in the county, and they created schools for Black kids. They put training in the name of my school, Randolph County Training, because they did not expect Black people to be anything other than people trained for something. They didn't expect them to be professors and lawyers and engineers and doctors the way they became. You understand what I'm saying? Because it was a notion of separate development. Now, Jim Crow said that little Alvin Thornton had to ride in the back of the Trailway bus, right? He had to go to the back of the restaurant across from my school to have his food handed out to him. He could have his life threatened at gunpoint at the age of 14 for simply going to get a hamburger. Jim Crow, he says that you have to pay what? A poll tax in order to vote. Black people didn't have any money. They knew that if you had to pay to vote, you wouldn't vote. So Jim Crow was a vicious system of oppression of our people. And I'm saying to people like DeSantis and Trump and others, you're trying to, in a more sophisticated way, subtle way, you're trying to reinvent that system in 2023, I'm sorry.
Dr. Thornton, kind of share with us that how bad was it in your day or relate to segregation? How bad was it?
Well, if you have a people who are separate, who are given secondary, no access to libraries.
Okay.
You couldn't access the libraries, right? You have hand-me-down books with the name of white children on them once you open it up, right? Hand-me-down desks, right? You're not paid, teachers are not paid equally if you're black versus white. It was bad. Most black people, some owned land, but most did not. They were sharecroppers working on the land owned by white people. Most black people they were not given access, as I said earlier, to government benefits and programs, so it was bad. Now, one of the things that was beneficial for black people, we were what? We understood what we were up against. So we were united through our church and our school and our communities, and we were proud people. That was if there's anything good about it, right? But it was a bad system. Now it was so bad for us, but it was so good for them. That's why they fought so brutally to keep it. That's why John Lewis would have his head beaten in, and Bull Connor and those people with sick dogs on him and water hoses on our children, and locked Dr. King up because that system was very profitable. The wealth of our community, the labor of our mothers and fathers, as they cleaned the homes of white women and black men paid little or nothing, that was great wealth for the people who did that to our people. And from that, they could build large homes and investments and transfer that wealth to their children. So it was bad for us, but a lot of people profited from it.
Amen. And Dr. Thornton, I know we are blessed to have opportunity now to do a whole lot of things that back yonder we couldn't do. But we'll never need to forget how we got where we are. We never need to forget that. So what you share, especially with my black brothers, what should we always remember about how we get where we are now?
Well, always, what I do is I never forget Nolan and Rachel. You see, my great grandparents who were enslaved in Troup County, Georgia. Mm-hmm. They were enslaved for the first 14 years of their lives. I never forget them. Okay, and now what do I mean by that? They're suffering. You see, my great grandparents, the Wares, who were enslaved on the Chattahoochee there in Franklin. I never forget the suffering of my grandmothers. You see, Caroline and my great grandmother and grandfather Nolan, they suffered, and I never forget that. Now, what that means then is that I must do justice to their suffering in my life. You see, and I must make sure that my children, I have 4 grandchildren, know of their suffering. So as they walk and as they study, that they will always carry themselves with pride. But if you steal, this is why people try to hide books from our children and don't want them to learn, because when you steal that legacy from them, you empty out their minds of the historical basis for knowing and respecting their history. They know that. That's why DeSantis and those don't want our children taught their history, because they know, just like me and you and others, if we know our history and teach it to our children early, they will respect their history in their behavior, in their interest in learning and knowing. They will. But if you deny that to them, it's just I said earlier, if you not deny them to history, they will have no sense of who they are. They will have no sense of their identity. They will not be interested in learning and competitive and living purposeful lives because you will deny them their history. That's why DeSantis is trying to deny to our children and to all children, white children too, AP history, African American history. He wants to deny that because he knows that when people know that history, they're going to be a much more purposeful people.
Amen. We talked a year ago, Dr. Thornton, and that one statement that you made, I have never forgot it. You said that a black snake will bite you just as quick as a white snake. And what I seen in Memphis, Tennessee, just a few weeks ago, what happened in Memphis, Tennessee, in the place where Dr. King lost his life fighting for the rights of garbage workers. So could you just share just a little bit with that on that, Dr. Thornton?
Well, you know, as I said, if you strip, including police officers or Justice Clarence Thomas or Ben Carson, I can name them. If you strip them of their history and their relationship with their people, strip it, they will become agents of their own oppression. So that just because a person is black, once some of them put on that uniform and they're just officers in a uniform, they're people in a uniform. They don't understand what their obligation is, be they black or white, to protect a community. They will become some of the most brutal and violent oppressions, as you saw in the killing of the young man there in Memphis. Just with Justice Thomas, who has been more injurious to the interests of the black community than any Supreme Court justice. Okay, he is about to lead the effort, my dear brother, to overturn affirmative action from which he benefited. Now he's a black man, and he's about to lead the effort. God forbid, next June, the Supreme Court will end affirmative action, from which he benefited, from which my generation benefited, from which white women mostly benefited, and he will lead a black man, from which black businesses benefited. You understand what I'm saying to you?
Yes.
So then he's black, and as Thurgood Marshall and others said, a black snake, a mindless black snake, will bite you just like any other color snake. In fact, that bite will hurt you more than the bite of a racist white snake.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Thornton, for bringing that out, because that needs to be brought out. Again, I want to say to the one that is watching live, please continue to share this out, because this is some great information that we as Black Americans, we need to hear this.
Yes, and you say that because there is, see, people we have to realize we are in the nadir where our country is becoming just like the Alabama football team, and just like the Georgia football team, and just like the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, becoming very diverse. You see, you have all kinds of young men out there in the football field, black and white, and even some other ethnic groups playing football and competing, right? Our country is becoming that way. We are becoming a diverse nation. And there are a lot of people who will never accept that. You understand? Yes. They will do whatever they can to reject diversity. They don't, just like they didn't want me to go to school with white children. You see what I'm saying? They denied me that opportunity for all of my life. I could not go. They don't want that now. But see, there's nothing that they can do now to stop it except engage in the violence that you see now. The violence, the Proud Boys attacking the Capitol.
Yes.
You understand? Because they are afraid of the diversity, as opposed to saying what? That's the beauty of our nation.
Yes.
Diversity. See, you have to keep in mind at the turn of the century, when white people came to this country, they came as Italians, they came as Spaniards, they came as Germans. You understand? They came as Polish. That's what they were. And they lived in New York and they lived in Chicago. Now, there were those among them who were racist, who said, Forget about your ethnic background. You must become white and racist. This is the danger. You and in order for you to evidence that, you must hate Black people. So we became the brunt of that. See, as opposed to saying what? No, we are a diverse nation of people from all kinds of ethnicities, and our beauty is in what? Respecting that diversity, allowing it to flower, and democracy comes out of that. Now, people like DeSantis and Trump and what I call the Trumpist conservative wing, they don't accept what I just said to you, brother, and that's the fight that we're in.
Good. And Dr. Thornton, what would happen as young black men in June, if we don't stand up and be a part of good trouble?
Now, look, remember what Martin, there are pictures of Martin, and even people like John Lewis and Martin, and those were young brothers when they got started, right? They're 17, 18, 19 years old, okay? And they're getting in good trouble.
Yes.
So because people would ask Martin Luther King, why do you go get the kids and get them in good trouble and have them locked up in the jail? And he would say, what else would you have them do? What more purposeful thing should they be doing at this point? Now, if we don't give our children a mission, a charge, as Martin and those gave John Lewis a charge to be engaged, purposeful, right? To be engaged in the struggle for voting, participation, being a part of organizations that are purposeful, young people, they will get in bad trouble.
Yes.
But if we lead them, give them examples, they will do exactly for us what they did for King. They will come to him and they will join and they will march, you see, and they will do what? They will walk with sheriffs to integrate schools as little babies. They will do that. But if we don't give them a command and ask them, they will do what? They will fall prey to what I call the mass culture. And that mass culture will eat them up. It will turn them into things we don't even recognize. They will prey upon themselves and their community. And we do not want that. I mean, you will look at them and you won't even recognize what they are, the way they dress, the way they talk, the way they're uninvolved, the way they're not competitive. So we have an obligation to go get them, let them know what good trouble is.
That's right.
And ask them to come with us.
And one thing I want to bring out on this live, good trouble is not killing each other.
Well, look, you have to teach, as I always said, my dear brother, you must start. It starts with love. You have to love what you see. See, the white conservative racists in the old days always taught us to hate what we see when we look at other Black people. The mere color of the skin was something we did not like. So we used Atra to try to lighten it. Our nose was too big. Our lips were too big. Our hair was too coarse, you see? And so that you look at that and you say, I don't like that. I don't like that. And we did a lot of harm to each other, and we're doing harm to each other now. No person, no matter the color, should be killing each other. But the disproportionate killing of us by us.
Yes.
Which means that there's a deficit of love.
Yes.
There should never be a situation where you will harm others who are similarly underrepresented. See, that means that you don't love that person. So we must teach love first. Okay. Yes. And we have a long ways to go in terms of teaching love, especially among men, because you know how we are. We're men, so we don't have it's even calling each other brother.
That's right.
And embracing each other and talking to each other in very, very embracing ways. It's very difficult for us to do that.
Yes. Dr. Thornton, I want to mention this here. I'm a part of a meeting called Men's Let's Talk, where men come together and we just have a conversation. And I wish more men would kind of become a part of this meeting, because it's just men and we talking about everything. We talk about the good, we talking about the bad, we talking about things that will build each other up in our community.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Martin and John Lewis and the Young and Abernathy and all. See, that's what they were. I mean, they were men. There were women there, obviously, who they were primarily in churches and in the SCLC and others, and they came together and they talked. And they always started out with prayer, and they started out with spiritual messages about love and care and all that. That's how they started out, right? And that's what we must do now, because a lot of the young men that we're trying to get to, they've suffered, they've gone through trauma in their families, in their lives, and they need to be brought in, and they can almost begin to draw strength from each other, sharing pain, successes, losses, and those kinds of things, and then finding a way that they can do what? Do things together.
That's right. That's right.
And it can start in like I tell people, it can start in very simple ways.
Yes.
You know, simple ways like where you live, making it something that you are proud of.
That's right. That's right.
No trash on the ground. The grass is cut. Just simple things, right? Come on now.
Yes.
Come on, everybody. Well, I'm not asking everybody to be a rich person overnight, short of somebody winning $2.2 billion in the lottery. But anyway, we'll talk about that, brother. But it means that men come together and to say, what? We're going to make it a popular for us to be doing certain things as men. What we call each other, how we talk to each other. We're going to return to be strong people in our families. In our families. I call it being child-centered. Because when you're child-centered from the little ones, your life is going to be better. See, many of the men we're talking about have children. Okay. They have children in element, being involved in that child's school. Believe me, for me and others, it is so strengthening when you associate with the little ones.
Yes, correct.
It makes your manhood so much stronger.
Yes.
Those little ones, right? You know.
Yes, yes.
I see you.
And since you brought it up, I'm gonna have to bring this up, Dr. Thornton, because it gives me joy every time my niece comes around, and I love her to life.
Absolutely.
She gives me joy. She loves to play and keep me young.
Absolutely. But it also means that you as a man, you become a protector.
Yes, yes.
Of her and her environment, right? And wherever she is, you want to make sure that she is safe and secure and being respected. Well, if you don't have a relationship with that baby, you don't feel obligated to do that. But when you do, look, I have 2 daughters and 4 grandkids, and believe me, my manhood, in terms of my role, is an extension, as it should be, of protecting them.
Yes. Yes.
Which means there's certain things I have to do. But if I'm not connected to them, as all men should be to their families and children, then I become like what I call a lone bull in the woods out there running crazy, doing all the things that lone bulls do, right?
Dr. Thornton, this has been great, but I got one more question to talk about, and we're gonna let you go.
Yeah.
But I want you to share, where do you see Black America headed in the 21st century?
Well, you know, it's what I call the two-ness.
Yes.
See, because there is Black America, but really there are 3 Black Americas almost, and they're going in different directions.
Yes.
You know, there's the Black America who is college educated, have nice homes, health care, older Blacks like me with nice pensions, retired, nice homes, children who've done well. Then there's that middle group, all Black America now, who is squeezed, what I call the squeezed middle class, still trying to make it, right? College debt, still trying to whatever. And then there is the class that is still outside of the American economic system. And that's about 1/3 of our people, completely outside, no insurance, marginally employed, not graduating from even high school or college. So those are the 3 elements. Now, those 3 elements can go separate and apart from each other. They shouldn't. We should unite and come together and move forward together. But those are the 3 elements. Now, each one of them, that first element that I talked about, it must be the vanguard. as Martin was. See, Martin was a middle class son of an upper middle class preacher, and he returned to his people in Montgomery and Birmingham and Alabama, and he led. That's the responsibility of the first group of Blacks that I talked about, right? Yes. That second group must, because it's on the precipice of moving forward. That second group must compete, do well, and then that third group, the first two groups must help that other group, the last group, which is on the outside. It's a marginalized group. It's in prison, much of it, right? Not graduating from high school, not going to college, have no wealth at all, none, no wealth, no savings. And we must restructure society so that that group can, in fact, be helped. Just like was done, don't ever forget this, because as I just described the Black community, so was the white community in the 30s and 40s in this country. And we had government programs to help that group, the Appalachian whites, right? And the Southern white who had they were just like what I just described. And we had all kinds of government programs from the land-grant colleges to almost free college education, right? The Veterans Bill, the GI Bill, all those things, suburban housing, in order to bring that group up. So that's where we are, my dear brother. And if we don't know this history that I'm describing, we won't know what our community is like, and we will not know how to strategically help it. Okay.
Dr. Thornton, I want to thank you so much tonight for coming on my podcast. It has been wonderful just to sit here. Not only did you help my audience, you helped the one that hosting this podcast tonight.
Well,
and I want to thank you for that.
Yes.
And we finna go, but I got to ask you one more thing to share this here, Dr. Thornton, because everybody is not going to be a professor in education, be a doctor and different things, but there are trades that some that goes to. Kind of give them some encouraging word concerning that, doctor.
Well, you know, there are avenues for every child.
Yes.
I mean, we call it career technical education.
Mm-hmm.
CTE, which depending on, I always tell parents, find out what your child's aptitude and interests are, and then take that child in that direction. Traditional college stuff like what I did is not for every child. Mm-hmm. Nor is it necessarily the one that gives you the most money. And so it gives you the most freedom to run your mouth the way I do. So check your child's interests. And if that child is interested in a career technical education that will lead to personal and career reward, whether it is in plumbing or electricians or automobile repair and whatever. Now, computer science, you don't have to necessarily go to college, 4-year college for that kind of stuff anymore. Let that child do that and celebrate that child. We have to show, that's why when we do our RCTS scholarship, I have to mention that.
Yes.
We not only give the scholarship to kids who go into 4-year colleges, we give the scholarship for kids who are going to career technical education at community colleges and other things. So, but tell the child you're going somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to go to a 4-year college. You don't have to. In fact, for some children, it's better for them to go and get what we call career technical education.
Amen. And again, I want to thank you, Dr. Thornton. I'm going to let you go. This has been so wonderful, Doctor.
Métis and Lily May are proud. We always have to lift up the ancestors.
Yes. Because them two ladies was close friends for many years.
Hey, man, we can't tell everything, but they were close.
That is correct. That's correct. So, Dr. Thornton, before we close, is there the last word you want to share with the audience before we go off?
No, I'll just say that I'm very proud of the work that you're doing and having these podcasts to bring people like myself before your audience. I just deeply appreciate what you do in that regard, because knowledge is in fact restorative of a hurt people.
Yes. So to all the audience that listen, I want y'all to continue to share this out, and you always can go back and listen to it and watch it, the replay, because one thing about it, it's not going anywhere. It'll be there.
That's right.
So this
That's
is
right.
knowledge at best. Black
Yeah.
history, knowledge at best.
From a mighty RCTS Bulldog.
Yeah. Yeah. So y'all stay blessed until the next time.